Hi, this is Mr. Evans Business. This is a re-recording of a previous video that had very bad sound quality, so hopefully this one will be better. This is a revision presentation. It's going to very quickly go through Unit 1, Business in the Real World for GCSE. It's really important that you know this unit and everything that's assessed in it because it comes up in both papers at the end of the course. So, what is a business? This is the first thing we learn. It's an organisation that uses its resources to trade goods and services with the aim of making a profit. In other words, a business has land, labour, capital, and those factors of production are organised by the enterprise, the management, into a production process. They're combined in the production process, and businesses make outputs, which are goods and services, usually with the aim of making a profit. All right, meeting customers' wants and needs. Businesses have limited resources. There is limited land, labour and capital available, and therefore decisions have to be taken about how you're going to use them. You can't spend 300,000 on new computers and an advertising campaign if you've only got £300,000. This concept is known as opportunity cost. The next best alternative foregone. All businesses face it because businesses have to choose how to allocate their resources in order to best make a profit. Businesses are either in the primary, secondary or tertiary sectors of production. The primary sector involves extracting raw materials. In the secondary sector, they're manufactured into something. And in the tertiary sector provides services to final consumers. Businesses, when they set up, they need to decide where they're going to locate. This is the physical place from where they're going to trade, and businesses will consider how close they are to customers, which is the proximity to the market, the availability of raw materials in the local area, the availability of labour, the amount of competition, and the costs incurred in setting up in that area. So that's part of location factors where a business is going to go. Right, probably the most difficult and important concept in this unit is that of liability. Some businesses have unlimited liability where the owners of the business are entirely responsible for all of the debts of the business. So in this case, I've given the example of I've run a plumbing company as a sole trader. I have some materials that I use for the business that are worth £10,000, and then I have my personal assets, my bank account and my house. If the business were to get into financial trouble, I borrowed some money from a bank and I couldn't pay it back, that bank would take my house. The alternative is to set up a limited liability company, either a public or private limited company. That would give me limited liability, whereby I invest £10,000 in the business. Okay, if that business were to not be able to meet its debt obligations, yes, the business would go into liquidation. I would lose my £10,000, but my personal assets would be protected. Okay, key concept that you need to understand. Businesses can be owned as sole traders, where the owner gets to make all the decisions and keep all the profit, but they have unlimited liability and kind of limited skills and capital. Partnership is when two or more people run a business, so we get more skills in the business, we get a bit of cover to help us out if we're ill or something, but we've still got unlimited liability, and there's more chance of arguments, obviously. In a private limited company, these businesses benefit from limited liability. So the shareholders of the company can only lose the money that they've invested in the business, and the business is its own separate legal entity that employs people, and it goes on even if the owners of the business change, which is good if you've got a really good brand name. However, you need to register with Companies House, which can be costly. You need to publish financial data, and you don't get the opportunity to sell your shares on the stock market. Whereas a public limited company, the only difference between a public and a private limited company, well, there are some, but it tends to be around the fact that the public limited companies can sell their shares on the stock market and anyone can become an owner, which makes it easier for them to raise finance. Not-for-profit organisations are a huge number of organisations that exist for a different reason other than making a profit. Businesses all have stakeholders. Okay, the stakeholders on the specification are these ones here, the first 5 here. They're groups of people who have an interest in the business because it has an effect on them. These stakeholders might all have different aims, and therefore they can come into conflict with each other. So once we have decided that we're going to start a business, we know what sort of ownership we're going to do, we're going to make a business plan. Why? Because it's basically going to help us clarify our aims, set our objectives, know how we're going to organise the business, but crucially, they are going to help us raise finance. If we're trying to get a loan from a bank to start a business, they're going to want to see a business plan, a cash flow forecast. If I'm trying to raise money on the stock market from investors, they're also going to want to see one. The business plan will lay out our aims and objectives, which is what we're going to organise our resources in order to achieve. These might change as a business goes over time. So starting from just surviving or breaking even, to growing, to then maximising profit and shareholder value. All meanwhile, we might have social and ethical aims, which are aims to benefit the wider community. You need to know total revenue, you need to know how to calculate it. This is the amount of money a business gets from selling its product. Its fixed costs stay the same no matter how much a business makes. So rent would be an example. Doesn't matter how many cakes I make in my bakery. If I make no cakes, the landlord still wants rent. If I make 1 million cakes, that landlord still wants the same amount of rent. Variable costs, however, change in proportion. So the raw materials for my cakes, if I make no cakes, I spend no money on raw materials. If I make 1 million cakes, I spend a lot of money on raw materials. Total costs of them all added together. Profit is calculated by total revenue minus total cost. Must learn that formula absolutely off by heart. Once we have established our business, we may want to grow our business. We can do this organically, where we use these methods to grow our business ourselves, or we can simply spend a lot of money on another company like Jaguar Land Rover did, and we take over another business. When we grow, one of the benefits of the business is we get economies of scale. This shows the average unit cost falling as we increase our output. Okay, that's a benefit of growth called economies of scale. It happens because we get benefits from bulk buying raw materials and things like that. However, we get to a point where the organisation becomes more difficult to control, and it actually increases our costs again, and we start to suffer diseconomies of scale. So that's a very brief overview of this unit.